For centuries, the Galaxy Council stood as the pillar of unity among the stars. Thousands of species sent their brightest minds to its chambers, believing in diplomacy above all else. Yet even within that great hall of light and reason, there was a shadow, one cast by arrogance, fear, and the quiet envy reserved for a single young species that had risen too fast and burned too bright: humanity. When the humans first joined the council, they were cautious and respectful. Their worlds were few, their fleets modest, their ambition restrained. But they learned quickly, adapting alien technologies with impossible speed, reshaping doctrines that had stood unchanged for millennia. Other species whispered about them with a mix of fascination and unease. To some, humans were innovators. To others, they were a threat disguised as allies. Then came the trade disputes. The Council's elder species, those that had sat in their seats since before Earth's sun was young, grew tired of human influence spreading through commerce, culture, and technology. Humans had introduced faster reactors, cleaner engines, efficient terraforming methods. They were solving problems the Council had long accepted as permanent. That was the true offense: progress without permission. So the Council sought to remind Earth of its place. Subtle sanctions were imposed. Trade routes were taxed unfairly. Colonies were denied charter recognition. When humans protested, their representatives were silenced under the veil of procedural review. But humanity endured, building alliances outside the traditional channels. They spoke to the outcasts, the frontier dwellers, the ignored. They formed bonds in places the Council had long abandoned. The tipping point came during the Summit of Peace. A gathering meant to reaffirm unity. For humanity, it was a trap. The agenda was clear. They were to surrender control over independent colonies in exchange for continued protection. It was a polite demand for submission. The human envoy, a calm figure in a gray uniform, listened as the Grand Speaker of the Council outlined the terms. Every sentence dripped with condescension masked as diplomacy. The other delegates nodded along, smug in their superiority. But when the speech ended, the human delegate did not rise to negotiate. They stood in silence, their expression unreadable, and then simply said, "No." The hall erupted in outrage. No one had ever refused the Council so openly. Threats followed: economic isolation, political exile, even military pressure. But the human delegate merely looked around the chamber and replied, "If this is peace, then we want no part of it." Then, turning their back on the assembly, they walked away. No declaration of war. No angry rhetoric. Just silence and departure. For a time, the Council celebrated. They called humanity reckless, doomed, arrogant. The media networks across the stars mocked Earth's defiance. "They will return begging," said the elder species, their voices echoing through the halls of power. They always do, but they were wrong. Months passed. Then years. The human presence vanished from Council space. Their colonies closed communication relays. Their embassies emptied. Merchant fleets once common in alien ports disappeared, leaving behind only rumors and whispers. The trade networks began to strain. Certain components, once cheap and easily sourced from human factories, became rare. Starship reactors that relied on human-designed alloys began to fail. The Council's fleets slowed, their industries stalled. Meanwhile, at the edge of known space, humanity thrived. They built quietly and relentlessly. Without the Council's interference, they expanded into uncharted systems, turning barren worlds into thriving settlements. They developed new technologies, combining science with creativity that the rigid species of the Council could never imitate. They discovered new energy forms, faster-than-light networks, adaptive warships. While the Council squabbled over declining resources, human scouts mapped entire sectors in silence. They formed an alliance of their own, not through coercion but through respect. Dozens of minor species, long oppressed or ignored by the Council, joined them. These new allies were offered equality, not servitude. Together they formed the Coalition of Free Worlds. Then came the first incident. A Council patrol vessel crossed into what was once neutral space, now claimed by the Coalition. The officers demanded inspection rights, assuming authority they no longer possessed. The human fleet responded instantly, not with warnings but with action. The patrol ship vanished from sensors within seconds. When the Council demanded an explanation, they received none. Only silence. The council grew nervous. Fleets were mobilized. Diplomatic envoys sent messages that went unanswered. The arrogance that once ruled their chambers turned to unease. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's balance trembled. Finally, the council decided to reassert dominance. A grand armada was assembled, over 1,000 ships from every major species. It was a display meant to intimidate, not to fight. They advanced into coalition space under the banner of peace enforcement. They never returned. Weeks later, fragments of those once proud ships drifted through the void. Their hulls melted and twisted. The Council's intelligence division recovered only one transmission, cut short by static. The final words were chilling. "They are here. We never stood a chance." Panic swept through the core worlds. The Council demanded explanations. Reports trickled in. Human fleets emerging from hyperspace like ghosts, striking and vanishing before response fleets could form. They used technology unseen by any other civilization. Their ships moved faster than physics should allow. Their weapons left no debris, only silence. But it was not conquest they sought. They did not invade or occupy. They dismantled the Council's power piece by piece. Starports, shipyards, and administrative hubs vanished under precise strikes. Yet civilian worlds were spared. Humanity was not seeking vengeance on innocents. They were dismantling tyranny. Soon, messages began to appear across the networked channels of the galaxy. They were calm, almost serene, carrying the insignia of the coalition. "We do not seek war," the message read. "We seek respect." The Council built its peace on obedience. We build ours on freedom. The old order has ended. The declaration sent shockwaves through every government, every fleet, every species. The Council convened an emergency session, desperate to restore control. But their communications were jammed. Their defense grid went dark. Their capital world's skies shimmered with light. And then the human fleet appeared. They didn't attack immediately. Instead, they projected an image across the planet's upper atmosphere, a simple gesture. The flag of the coalition followed by a single phrase, "This is the price of arrogance." Moments later, precision bombardment struck the defense towers. Not a single civilian structure was hit. The operation was surgical, terrifying in its restraint. Within hours, the once mighty council had fallen silent. In the aftermath, the galaxy changed. Planets that had once cowered under the council's authority began to speak freely. Former member species reached out to the coalition, not as subjects but as equals. Trade resumed under new laws, fair, transparent, mutual. The galaxy entered a new era, one built not on hierarchy but on collaboration. From Earth's orbiting stations, humanity watched the transformation unfold. They did not celebrate with parades or boasts. Their leaders simply observed and ensured stability. For them, it had never been about revenge. It had been about dignity, about refusing to bow to those who mistook power for wisdom. In time, history would remember that quiet day when a lone human walked away from the council's hall. That simple act of defiance had marked the end of an age. The galaxy had mocked humanity's courage, dismissed their independence, underestimated their resolve. And for that, they paid a heavy price. Yet even as the stars burned with the echoes of that reckoning, the humans remained humble. They continued to explore, to build, to learn. They welcomed former enemies into their alliance and turned battlefields into bridges. Because while others saw destruction, humanity saw opportunity to begin again, stronger and wiser. The Council's grand archives, once filled with decrees and laws that bound the stars, were rebuilt as a library open to all. On its entrance stood a plaque bearing words engraved in every known language of the galaxy. Respect is not given. It is earned. And once earned, it must never be forgotten. And so the legend of the humans spread, not as conquerors but as the species that dared to walk away and taught the galaxy the true meaning of strength.